The slap echoed through the crowded cafe like a gunshot. Cole Brennan sat frozen, blood trickling from his split lip, while his 8-year-old daughter, Penny, watched with trembling hands wrapped around her hot chocolate. The bully named Derek laughed, circling his prey like a wolf, sensing weakness. "What's wrong, old man? Too scared to fight back in front of your little princess?" Every customer looked away. No one moved, but something shifted in Cole's eyes. Something cold, something calculating, something that hadn't surfaced in 5 years. His calloused hands, the same hands that built wooden furniture and braided Penny's hair every morning, now rested perfectly still on the table, just like everyone else, who kept the building running while she collected the credit. Before we continue this incredible story, if you believe in the power of kindness and love stories that remind us what really matters, please subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling us about a time when someone's kindness changed your perspective. Your support helps us share more stories that warm the heart and inspire the soul. Derek saw a coward. He didn't see the ghost. He didn't know that those quiet hands had once ended threats far more dangerous than him in the shadows of Fallujah. And he certainly didn't know that touching Penny would be the worst mistake of his life. Saturday morning, sunlight streamed through the windows of Rosie's cafe, painting golden rectangles across worn wooden tables and checkered floors. The smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls drifted through the air, mixing with the gentle hum of conversation from the dozen or so customers scattered throughout the small establishment. An elderly couple shared a newspaper in the corner booth, their coffee cups leaving rings on the laminated menu. They'd stopped reading years ago. A young mother wrestled with a toddler and a stack of pancakes near the back, her patience wearing thin, but her smile still intact. This was the heartbeat of small-town America, the kind of place where everybody knew everybody and strangers were noticed immediately. Cole Brennan sat in his usual booth by the window, the one with a cracked vinyl seat that nobody else ever wanted, watching his daughter Penny carefully arrange the marshmallows in her hot chocolate into what she called a snowman family. Her small fingers worked with intense concentration, tongue poking out slightly as she positioned each puffy white piece with surgical precision. The morning light caught the blonde of her hair, turning it almost golden, and Cole felt the familiar ache in his chest that came from loving something so completely it terrified him. At 45 years old, Cole looked like exactly what he appeared to be, a working man with calloused hands and tired eyes. His flannel shirt was faded but clean, his jeans worn soft from years of sawdust and sweat. There were scars on his hands that he told people came from woodworking accidents, and that was true enough for the recent ones. The older scars, the ones that ran along his knuckles and up his forearms, those had different stories. Stories he never told. The gray streaking through his dark hair had appeared almost overnight 5 years ago, right around the time his world collapsed into itself. Friends said it made him look distinguished. He knew it was a map of loss. He was a quiet pillar in the town of Elmhurst, a man who fixed what was broken without complaint, a widower raising his daughter in the small house his own father had built. He was, by all accounts, utterly unremarkable, and that was the way he needed it to be. The peace shattered when the bell above the cafe door jangled, with a violence that made several patrons flinch. Derek Morgan swaggered in, followed by 2 younger men who mimicked his strut and sneer. Derek was all coiled aggression, a man in his late 20s, whose reputation was built on a foundation of intimidation and the small-time muscle work he did for local contractors, who didn't ask questions. He had a face that had seen too many fights and learned nothing from them. His eyes scanned the room, a predator looking for a soft target, and they landed on Cole with a gleam of recognition. He knew the story, or the version the town told. The quiet carpenter who'd lost his wife to cancer, left alone with a kid. To Derek, Cole was furniture, part of the scenery, and today he felt like rearranging it. "Well, look who it is," Derek announced, his voice too loud for the small space. The town's favorite charity case. He stopped at Cole's table, looming over the booth. Penny shrank back against the vinyl, her snowman family forgotten. Cole didn't look up. He kept his eyes on his daughter, his voice a low, calm murmur. "We're just having breakfast, Derek. No trouble today." "I decide when there's trouble," Derek said, snatching a marshmallow from Penny's cup and popping it into his mouth. Penny let out a small, shocked gasp. Cole's hands tightened around his coffee mug, but he didn't move. "See, even your kid knows not to cry. Smart girl. Probably knows her daddy's a coward too." The other two men chuckled by the door. The elderly couple had stopped pretending to read their paper. The young mother gathered her toddler closer. Cole took a slow breath, the kind he used to take before a door kick, counting down the seconds until the world exploded. "We'll be leaving now," Cole said, standing up and reaching for Penny's coat. As he turned, Derek's hand shot out and shoved him hard against the edge of the table. "I didn't say you could go." Then came the slap. It wasn't a punch. It was an insult, a demeaning, open-handed blow meant to humiliate. The sound was indeed like a gunshot in the quiet cafe. Cole's head snapped to the side, and a thin line of blood welled from his lower lip. He slowly righted himself, using the motion to subtly position his body between Derek and Penny. He tasted copper and shame, but beneath that a different flavor, cold and metallic, the taste of a ghost waking up. His vision for a second didn't see the checkered floor of Rosie's cafe, but the dust-choked alley of a foreign city, the weight of a rifle in his hands, the static in his ear. He blinked it away. Derek was laughing, leaning in, his breath smelling of stale beer and cheap cigarettes. "What's wrong, old man? Too scared to fight back in front of your little princess?" Cole looked past him, scanning the room. Every face was averted. No help would come. This was his to handle. This was always his to handle. In that moment, Cole Brennan made a decision. The man he had been for 5 years, the gentle father, the careful craftsman, the ghost of a soldier, receded like a tide going out. What rose in its place was not rage, but a profound and chilling clarity. He looked at Derek, and for the first time, Derek saw a flicker of something in those tired eyes that made his grin falter. It was the absence of fear. It was the flat, assessing gaze of a man measuring distances, angles and vulnerabilities. Cole slowly raised a hand and wiped the blood from his lip with his thumb, studying the crimson smear. He then looked at Penny, whose eyes were wide with terror, and gave her the smallest, most imperceptible nod. It was a promise. It was an apology. It was a signal that Daddy had to do something now, and it wouldn't be pretty. He turned back to Derek, his body loose, his stance subtly shifting from defensive to something neutral, something ready. "You shouldn't have touched her," Cole said. His voice so quiet it was almost inaudible, yet it carried to every corner of the dead, silent cafe. "The hot chocolate. You touched what was hers." Derek snorted, mistaking quiet for weakness. "Oh, I'll do more than touch her cocoa, Grandpa." That was the line. The final line. Cole moved. It wasn't the wild swing Derek expected. It was economical, brutal, and over in less than 2 seconds. Cole's left hand, hardened by years of labor, shot out not as a fist but as a rigid blade, striking. The nerve clustered just below Derek's sternum. It was a breath-stopping, muscle-locking blow. Derek's eyes bulged, all air and arrogance leaving his body in a silent, agonized whoosh. As he doubled over, Cole's right hand came up not to punch, but to grip. He seized the back of Derek's neck and, with a terrifying control of force, drove the man's face down onto the Formica tabletop. There was a wet, crunching thud, not enough to kill, not even enough to cause permanent damage, but precisely enough to shatter Derek's nose, chip several teeth, and imprint the checkered pattern of the table onto his forehead. Derek crumpled to the floor, a gurgling, moaning heap. The 2 men by the door stood frozen, their brains lagging behind the reality of what they'd just witnessed. Cole didn't even look at them. He bent down close to Derek's ear and spoke in a tone that belonged in another desert, another lifetime. "Listen to me very carefully. You are going to the clinic. You will tell them you walked into a door. You will never look at my daughter again. You will never speak to me again. If you do, the next time we have a conversation, it won't be in a public place. And it won't end with you conscious. Do you understand the operational parameters?" Derek, through the pain and shock, managed a weak, blood-bubbled nod. Cole stood up. He pulled a $20 bill from his wallet, laid it on the table to cover their breakfast and the mess, then took Penny's coat. He knelt before her, blocking her view of the man on the floor. His hands, which had just performed such clinical violence, were steady as he helped her into her sleeves, buttoned her coat, and wiped a stray tear from her cheek with his thumb. "Time to go, sweetheart," he said, his voice the gentle rumble she knew so well. She took his hand, her small fingers curling tightly around his. Together they walked towards the door. The two lackeys scrambled out of their way, pressing themselves against the wall. The bell jangled softly this time as they exited into the Saturday morning sun. No one in the cafe spoke. They just stared at the broken man on the floor and the empty booth by the window. The ghost had shown itself, and the town of Elmhurst would never look at Cole Brennan the same way again. Outside, Cole walked Penny to their old pickup truck. He lifted her into the passenger seat, buckled her in, and closed the door. As he walked around to the driver's side, he paused. Leaning against the fender for a moment, he took a deep, shuddering breath, the adrenaline bleeding away, leaving a hollow ache. He had sworn 5 years ago that man was gone. He had buried him in a quiet grave next to his wife's, vowing to be only what Penny needed. But some threats couldn't be reasoned with. Some shadows had to be met. With a deeper, older shadow, he got in the truck and started the engine. Penny was quiet, looking out the window. After a few blocks, she spoke, her voice small. "Daddy?" "Yes, Penny? Are you a superhero?" He glanced over at her, his heart breaking and mending all at once. "No, baby, I'm not a superhero. I'm just your dad. And sometimes dads have to make sure the bad people remember to be afraid too." He drove them home, the familiar streets passing by in a blur. The world had shifted on its axis back in that cafe. Derek had seen a coward. He hadn't seen the ghost. But now the ghost was awake, and Cole knew with a cold certainty that keeping him buried again would be the hardest fight of all. The quiet life was over. The war for peace had just begun on the checkered floor of a small-town cafe, and Cole Brennan, the man with the carpenter's hands and the soldier's eyes, was ready. He had to be, for Penny.